Once again, Nikola Jokic is staying in Denver. Fallout from Tim Connelly continues. And we'll take a look at some early looks at free agent options. We'll do all that and more on Locked On Nuggets. Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of Locked On Network, your team every day. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. Glad to be with you on a Friday. This is a solo episode. Adam has the MVR golf tournament, so make sure to go support all those efforts over there. He's out today. We'll be back next week with joint episodes as we roll through the offseason. Today, talk about Nikola Jokic. We'll talk about a little bit about some free agent options, and I do have a team building exercise based off of the Warriors that I want to get to as well. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including the old YouTube, where you can catch the video version of the show so you can see my very sunburned head. I was out yesterday. Yesterday was basically the kids got home midday from school. School's out. Oh, God, considering everything that's going on this week. And so we decided basically just to put out the patio and put up the bubble machine for my youngest, and the oldest and I played soccer and did the whole thing. And I definitely forgot to wear a hat because I've been bald basically for 20 years now, and I still don't remember to wear a hat. All right, let's get into it. So Mike Singer reported this on Thursday, but just because Shams is Shams, we'll go ahead and talk about Shams' report as well. Nikola Jokic has reaffirmed his long-term commitment to Denver in recent days, clearing ways to sign a $260 million super max contract. So that settles that. All of the talk about, well, Tim Connelly's gone, so now Jokic will leave and join a real contender from various people in different time zones. Now that's all gone. Jokic is going to be here. Look, Jokic may not finish his contract in Denver. That's the reality of the NBA, right? If things go sideways, and Tim Connelly's departure may lead to that eventually. If Calvin Booth isn't the guy, or if Calvin is the guy, and then somebody offers him literally any more money than, or standard price for a contender, then he's probably gone. And as that goes, then somebody else may come in, and that may be the difference. But we kind of said from the beginning, like, Jokic does not seem like the type of guy that would be like, oh, Conley's gone? No, I'm out. That just doesn't seem like who he is. The organization is more than just him, right? You still have a lot of people there, Ben Tenzer, Tommy Balchetis, all these people that have been a part of the Nuggets organization. Lisa, who's in charge of player development. You've got the relationship with the Cronkies, which is significant. You've got the relationship with people in the building. You've got the coaching staff. Malone, obviously, I think is part of it. So again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Nikola Jokic is going to retire as a Denver Nugget. I just don't think that at this point in the NBA life cycle, I can't confidently make that statement based off of how the league works. But that's less to do with Nikola Jokic as it is just like, this is just how the league goes. And, if you want to, and I will say this, Jokic, I don't think is somebody that would be like, okay with a rebuilding effort. I don't think he's somebody that would be like, yeah, that sounds great. Like, the regular season bores him enough as is, right? He wants to compete at a very high level, but he's going to sign the Supermax. That's going to happen. Terranier did report that Jokic's brothers met with Nuggets manager Calvin Booth and assistant Tommy Balchetis in recent days to discuss the team's future. All sides, sources say, left the meeting aligned for their vision. They wanted to get closer with the brothers and the family and get really locked in. Again, there's no real surprise here, but I do think the biggest thing is that there's no indication that Connelly's departure has caused tension. I'm sure that Jokic is kind of not thrilled about it. I'm sure, I will also say, this is just my experience with Nikola, is that his response would probably be like, oh no, I don't want this to happen. No. And that would be about it. It'd be like, oh, that's too bad. And then he'd just be like, well, things happen. A lot of this, I think, is that he would genuinely feel like it's out of his pay grade. Like, that's a lot of it. I think he would just be like, that's not my business. Like, I play basketball, right? and he plays basketball very well, and he gets paid for it very well. And that combination of things, I think, is enough for him to be satisfied. And as long as the team is good around him, and it is, and it continues to be good around him, and it should be, then I think Nikola Jokic is happy and he's staying in Denver. So the two-time MVP does not depart in free agency. He's not joining the Warriors, like some people talked about. He's not joining Dallas. Nikola Jokic is going to be a Denver Nugget for a long, long time, and we go from there. Let's take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the leftover stuff from Tim Connelly, just in recent days, just what we've kind of caught up on. We'll do all that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I want to talk about Rock Auto. You go into one of these big box stores and you try and ask them for a part, and they're going to tell you that their sister store has it, and it'll take like 15 minutes for somebody to bring it over. Why? Why are you going to waste your time sitting around waiting for that? Or it could be a half hour. Oh, sorry, he went to the other store. I've had this happen to me. Like I've literally had it happen where I've gone into a store and they've said, yeah, I'm going to have somebody bring it over. It'll be over here in 15 minutes. Just wait. And then it says, I'm sorry, he went to the other store and now it's lunch or whatever. And I'm like, I just walk out. I'm so frustrated. Don't mess with that. Just go to rockauto.com at home or in your pocket. You're going to save time and money. Some of these parts are they're going to cost up to 100% more at an auto parts store rather than just getting it from Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers for 20 years, and the price is the same whether you're a professional or do-it-yourselfer. If you're a professional, you still get the best prices. You don't have to deal with all the politics of in town, of all that stuff. Don't worry about that. They have everything that you need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go to rockauto.com right now and to see all the parts available for your car or truck, and write Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box so that they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day and your first listen each and every day. Make sure that your second listen is the Locked On NBA Big Board. You got Rafael Barlow, and you got Richard Stamen and Sam Ferris and Lee Fullen, and they're giving fans an in-depth look at the NBA draft. They got mock drafts, player rankings, and of course those big boards. Check it out wherever you get podcasts. It's the Locked On NBA Big Board. So in recent days, the big kind of takeaway from the Tim Connelly conversation is that I wouldn't expect a lot more commentary on the situation, is what I would tell you. Like, I think that Tim Connelly, when he arrives in Minnesota, will probably be very focused on the future. He will probably be very focused on, okay, here's this is very exciting for me. And, this team is in a really great spot and I'm just excited to be here. And people will be like, so about Denver. And he'll be like, yeah, so about Minnesota. And I think that there'll probably be comments. If you're wondering what happened to the presser, because I realize not everybody's on Twitter. Here's what happened with the presser. The schedule for Wednesday, the Colorado Avalanche have a game. So the arena was going to be pretty busy that day. So they reschedule for Thursday. And then members of the Nuggets staff pick up COVID. Several people in the organization picked up COVID. So they had to reschedule again. And so that's been postponed to next week. Once that presser happens, we'll have coverage for you on it, obviously over here at Locked On Nuggets. But again, I'll tell you, I'm just not expecting a lot of follow-up to the Tim Connelly situation. I will say this. I was told that I was wrong. I wanted to correct something. So years ago, the NFL had this rule that ownership could not own an NBA and NFL team. They lifted that restriction. And so Stan Kroenke is the owner of the Nuggets again. So they no longer have to pretend otherwise. Ann Walton is technically the person in charge, and Josh Kroenke is the governor. So there's a whole, it's complicated. Look, this is the deal. Okay. Stan Kroenke is the owner. He's the owner. Josh is the owner with him. And Josh does most of is the boss at the boss before Stan, but the decision making still goes through Stan Kroenke. Just does. Okay. So none of that changes from what we talked about the last week or so. I don't necessarily think that there's going to be a lot of change, in that most of the structure just moves up a peg, right? They'll probably bring somebody else in to take Balchedis' job as assistant GM. They may promote internally. I could see that being Tenzer. I could see that being Klibanoff. I could see that being any of the guys that have been there long term. All these people, I think, are within range of moving up in the organization. They all would like basically do most of the same stuff, but there's not going to be like I don't foresee at this point anyway, like a radical overhaul of new voices and lots of new people involved. I don't. It's possible, but I don't. Um, we'll see what their vision is for how they're going to structure things. I will just continue to say that I am expecting them to be more aggressive, and I think more aggressive than Connelly was, which is not necessarily as aggressive as Nuggets fans want, right? Because like there's levels of aggressive. Like when fans talk about being aggressive, they're like, we should trade for Damian Lillard, and that's okay. Well, that's a whole big thing. What I mean by that more is just that there will not be look, worst case scenario, we come into camp with the same guys if we don't get the right deal. Tim was always very concerned, and I thought it was a really prudent, and honestly, like I learned a lot about the NBA from watching him. He was always very concerned with, is the deal right for us? Not like, are you getting good value? Is it going to look good in the public eye? He didn't care about any of that stuff. But what he thought was, is this good? Is this a good return for us? Is the benefit that the team gets out of it better than we are now? Does the team get better? Which you say, like, that's pretty obvious. It's not all the time, because I think that there are GMs that do operate from I need to solve this specific problem. What's his market value? Okay, this offer is below his market value. Therefore, I will not trade him. Right. And then there's like the Daryl Morey aspect, which is, I think, very objective in terms of I have actually put a value on him, whether it's money or draft picks or whatever. Like there's an objective evaluation of what he's worth in a market to us. And that's always the key. And I think Calvin not being necessarily as attached to guys because he didn't draft them that's always a good thing. In my experience, GMs are always very attached to guys that they drafted. If you want a good example of this, it was in Portland with Neil O'Shea. Everyone knew that he drafted CJ McCollum, and that was why like CJ was his guy, because that was like the win that he got. And so even though it was obvious that CJ was the easiest way for them to improve that team, there was always a lot of resistance towards that. So I think it's better for Calvin Booth that he will probably come in with less resistance to those kind of ideas. Tommy Balchedis has been there forever. He was part of this entire growth process, but Tommy's also, in my experience, Balchedis is less. I would say he is not. How can I put this? I would be surprised if Tommy Balchedis was moved by sentimentality versus, basketball acumen. He's a very reasonable person in my experience, which is good. You want reasonable people in charge. You don't always have it in the NBA, mind you. Reasonable people are not always who runs the team, but that to me is kind of the takeaway. As far as Connelly goes, somebody asked me if they thought that there could be a reunion down the line. Maybe years and years, but that's going to be way down the line to the point where it's not even point talking about it. Now I think there's going to be a lot of reasons why I wouldn't expect, like, if Tim doesn't work out in Minnesota, which is entirely possible, and Tim would tell you as much, like, that's just how these jobs go. 2 years down the line, I don't see him like immediately coming back to Denver. It's just not usually how it works. So that's kind of like the wrap up on the Tim Connelly conversation. And barring new developments, which are always possible, in the presser next week, I'm kind of ready to turn the page and start looking forward with the Nuggets, which we'll do, as I want to talk a little bit about the Warriors and what they built and a comparison for what Denver's looking to do. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I do need to tell you about Truebill. So you have all these accounts and you pick up these things, and like, it is on your phone. You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to subscribe to this and it's going to change my life. And then you completely forget about it and you don't use it, but they're still charging you because they renew without your consent. That's a scam. And it's out to get your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions and stop that right now. It's the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't want, need, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. Companies make it hard to cancel. Truebill makes it easy to do so with just one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. They've got over 2 million users and help save them over $100 million, like Matthew B., who says, in a matter of seconds, I saved $660 for the year on my DirecTV bill. I saved $120 for the year on my Sirius XM bill and saved $840 a year on car insurance. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for making us part of your day and your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Make sure you check out Locked On NBA. It's got me on Tuesdays, Adam on Fridays. Lots of great stuff covering the NBA playoffs. And next week, the NBA Finals. So much stuff. And NBA Offseason is officially here. I'm going to be writing a column over at Action that breaks down what I've heard as far as what's going on with free agency talks early on, trade opportunities, the draft, all that kind of stuff. I tell you, it used to really wait. The league was very insistent that teams that didn't leak or put things out until after the finals. They wanted to focus on the finals, and teams have just more and more started ignoring that as more media has been willing to shift to that. Because if you're one of the newsbreakers, what do you say about the finals? So there's going to be lots of intel over the next couple of weeks for you guys to get excited about potential trade targets and free agents. You can hear more about that on Locked On NBA. Final segment here. The Warriors clinched last night. They beat the Dallas Mavericks in 5 games. Gentlemen's sweep, the gentlemen. And so just want to point this out. The Memphis Grizzlies got the furthest versus the Warriors of anybody. They beat the Warriors twice and were actually in that series and had a real chance to win. The Dallas Mavericks did not. Neither did the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets actually, I think, were closer than Dallas was. Like, if you just look at the scores and how those games went, like, Denver had a real chance to win game 3. And Denver, like, was not completely, and they won game 4. Dallas was never really in that series. Just never really in it. So, honestly, if Denver hadn't been hit so hard up front without 2 starters, it would have been a really interesting series. I maintain that that's not a bad matchup for Denver. But look, I do want to, not only do I want to credit Golden State. That's the thing, is if you say like, well, this team could, would have had a chance against them, it's supposed to knock them down. I put 2 championship tickets in preseason. I put one on the Denver Nuggets, and I put one on the Golden State Warriors at 12-1 because I just did not understand why people were doubting them. I really didn't. I'm not taking a victory lap here. I'm more wanting to talk about if you have something that works, if you have a formula that is sustainably works, people need to have a little bit more confidence in it. And that applies to the Nuggets. The Warriors, they got KD and it warped their perception of them because it became all about KD in that move. That team was amazing in 2015. Spoiler alert, the 2015 team was better than the 2016 Warriors. The 2015 Warriors team was better than 2016. They were the number 1 defense and led the league in pace. I've never seen that before. That's crazy. That's insane to lead the league in pace and be that good defensively. 2016, they had a great start, 22-0. And then further on, like, they were just kind of coasting. They slipped a little bit. That's why it wasn't necessarily surprising. In retrospect, I was shocked at the time because they won 73 games and were inevitable, but it wasn't insane to me, that the Warriors lost that finals in retrospect. But look, the Warriors, then they get KD and they win in 17 and 18. The 18 finals is one of the weirdest I've ever encountered. That team was ready to be done. Like, there was so much internal drama, and a lot of it was focused around KD, and that was pretty evident. But he was still on for another year, wanted to try and get the three-peat. They get, he gets hurt, Clay gets hurt, they lose to the Raptors. And in 2020, they basically tank. In 2021, it's essentially a rebuilding year. They make the play-in tournament, and they lose to Memphis. And they learned a lot. And one of the advantages was that step backwards that they took allowed them to build Jordan Poole and Juan Toscano Anderson, who gave them good minutes this season. Hasn't been in the playoffs. And Gary Payton II, and Jonathan Kuminga, who got minutes this year. Like, they knew they were going to need him, and he's been great for them. And so it's not just this Warriors team is not just like trotting out the same old formula. They've reinvented themselves to a certain degree, and they're not as explosive as they used to be, which is why I think people were like, this isn't that same Warriors team. Yeah, no, but they're still better than you. Like, that's what people didn't realize, was that underneath all the splashy shooting, the Warriors were still an incredible team that had an amazing undercore of defense, consistency, leadership, discipline, great offensive scheme. Everyone complained in Warriors world about how Steve Kerr, doesn't run enough pick and roll. If they run more pick and roll, that plays into the Mavericks. They beat this Mavericks team because of the way that they run, those off-ball cuts. Everything that Dallas does to slow down traditional pick and roll offenses was useless versus Golden State. Their weapons did nothing against Golden State's offense. And ultimately, Golden State's defense remains incredible because of coaching and talent and Draymond. And they don't have to be this incredible world-shaking team to be better than you, whoever you are. And that's what Golden State was this season in the Western Conference. They'll face a really great team in the Boston Celtics, which I'm recording this before Game 6, but doesn't really matter. I don't see the Heat winning 2. So they're going to face the Boston Celtics, and that should be a great series that I'm still trying to figure out. But ultimately, for me, it's a reminder that if you're building something in Denver, once you reach that apex and you have your prime, it doesn't have to be just then. You want to maximize it. You want to act like it is. But this is one of the benefits, because I oftentimes look at Nikola through the prism of Dirk. And that seems easy, right? Tall European superstar for a non-marquee market. But it's more a matter of the Mavericks had a great team in 2006 that made the finals, and Wade was just better than them. They had a great team in 2007 that had a bad matchup versus the Warriors, and that imploded everything. Nuggets fans remember them getting absolutely destroyed by the Nuggets in 2009, right? They're lost in the wilderness. They trade for Jason Kidd. They trade for Brendan Haywood. And, 2010 is like whatever. They're pretty good, not great. And then 2011 comes, and it all comes together. They get Caron Butler, who wound up being hurt, but would have been a big help that series. And also, it was a big reason that they got off to the start that they did. They had Deshaun Stevenson, like a random entrant that just kind of came in. My point here is that if you're able to build the core and you win enough to keep people happy, if people are able to commit to being a star in a market and being happy with that level of success and wanting to win there. And I think that the Nuggets have that with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Like, Jason Terry was amazing back in the day. Not like he's overlooked because that level was that was the era of like Kobe, right? The mid 2000s, people talked about T-Mac before he really started to get injured. All these types of guys. Gilbert Arenas at that time was one of the best guards in the league. But Jet was like a consistent guy who could have 40-point games and just help them win. And Jamal Murray has more physical tools than Jet does. He's taller. I think he's more athletic. He's got all this. You can build something with Nikola and Jamal, and if you stick with it, maybe it doesn't happen immediately, but if you stick with it and you can manage everything, you can wind up on the other side. Notably, however, though, Donnie Nelson was the GM for that entire time, head of basketball operations. So something to consider as we talk about this. But I just wanted to kind of comment that the Warriors have proven that if you have the foundation, we asked about foundation, you really should think of it. Even if you got to tear down the rest of the house, if you got that foundation, which is not just one player, and it's not just a coach, and it's not just a front office. If you have the foundation, which is central player, coach, and ethos, like a culture, which the Nuggets have, you can rebuild that, even if the first iteration doesn't work. So the good news with Nikola being committed to signing the Supermax is that you'll have the opportunity to take multiple tries at this. People are not going to act like that. They're going to say, like, if you don't do this now, he's going to leave, blah, blah, blah. I genuinely think that Nikola is built different. And that, I think, is going to help them more than anything, have a chance at a title, not 1 year or 2 years or 2 out of 4, but over a 6-7 year span. That's going to do it for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have yourselves a great weekend. Ab and I'll be back on Monday with another episode. Until then, make sure to check out the show on YouTube, and we'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.